Swimming was once banned in daylight. Men had to keep their chests covered and women were arrested for wearing bikinis.
Lurking behind an aspidistra is a scam.
Tonight, we uncover the history of the swimsuit.
How do you like it, fellas? Bit of your own medicine, huh?
We relive the birth of the surf culture.
We put on our board shorts and the girls put on their bikinis.
We see how it was that the swimsuit has evolved into such a fashion item and went on to become a subject for science in the search for speed. But what does the future hold for our national obsession?
People will come to the beach covered up and not bared.
The freedom of our life on the beach has been hard won, and the state of our swimming costumes has always reflected the morals of the times. At the turn of the century, beachgoers were demure and fully clothed. But they were in at the birth of a struggle for the freedom to wear the beachwear we love today, and for a whole new beach culture.
I think the bathing suits, the bathing costume, is indeed the most maligned piece of clothing that we can find in our wardrobe. It has been attacked by guardians of public morality, by fashion legislators, by parents, by everyone. Everyone seems to have an opinion about the swimsuit.
Bathing began because early physicians recommended taking the waters as a general cure-all.
There used to be a machine, a bathing machine, which was on wheels, and the people used to go into this bathing machine, get changed, and they'd wheel the machine down to the surf, and they'd just go into the surf in a little cage, and they'd dunk themselves in and out, and then come back, and they'd wheel the machine back up the beach, and they'd get changed and walk out in their clothes. That's going back a few years.
The 19th century costumes were totally sexist. Women were wearing 50 yards of clothing. Costumes that included petticoats, corsets, stockings, shoes, gloves, parasols, hats, the entire ensemble, which was crafted for promenade. Men, on the other hand, looked like escapees from Sing Sing. They were wearing one-piece wool jersey suits, usually striped and circus colors, which allowed them full mobility.
It took an Australian woman to start the fight for freedom. In 1909, the world's first aqua star, Annette Kellerman, was arrested on a Boston beach. Her bathers were labelled a shocking offence to public morality.
It was a scandal and a breakthrough. A breakthrough, of course, because a woman had shown to the world that she was capable of negotiating the waves. A scandalous event because Annette Kellerman wore as her costume of colonization a perfectly indecent piece of clothing that showed every curve and every dimple of her anatomy to the public.
By the 1920s, Kellerman's stand had brought real change. People swarmed to the beach in their thousands, wearing far more appropriate swimsuits.
Suddenly, the swimsuit was transformed into a skin-tight tubular garment that bared the upper arm, the shoulders, the upper thigh. And as soon as young women moved into this costume, matrons, police matrons, appeared on the beach wielding tape measures and handcuffs and hauling off young girls in truckloads to police stations. I think the most outrageous period of the swimsuit would have to be the 20s, when people really discovered the beach as a place to indulge in all sorts of activities, not only swimming. It was as though the world suddenly became infatuated with the possibility of transposing all its activities, its normal activities, into a new setting.
The beach became the place to be.
Sunday night was quite a night down Coogee. The pier was lovely. We used to go down there flirting with the boys, and they sat on the stone wall.
For 2 hours, the men used to walk up and down the promenade, and the girls would sit on the wall. and then it'd be a changeover. The boys would sit on the wall, and the girls would walk up and down.
We'd parade up and down and sort of, turn our nose up at them and just dying for them to take notice, you know.
And there'd be a lot of catcalling and shyacking and whistling, but it was good fun.
Exciting it may have been, but there were laws about what you wore, even on the beach and in the summer sun. Men weren't even allowed to bare their chests until 1936, when lifesavers took a stand.
When I was club captain, we were a bit tired of this, so we all got ourselves together and we got our banners out and our surf reels, about 4 reels, and we all marched down the beach in our trunks. And the beach inspectors threw their hands up in the air, and from then on it was just please yourself.
Tonight's Australia's first annual Beach Inspectors Dinner, and there are some very tasty dishes on the menu too. There's something happening here. And you're right, it's a bikini, the inspector's nightmare. She's not going to be ordered off, surely. But yes, she is.
Men may have won the right to bare their chests, but women had a long way to go. The fight to bare their bodies came with the birth of the surf culture.
2, 3, 4, tell the people what she wore.
It was an itsy-bitsy, teeny-weeny, yellow polka dot bikini that she wore for the first time today. An itsy-bitsy, teeny-weeny, yellow polka dot bikini, so in the locker she wanted to stay.
The bikini erupted in Western civilization in 1946. Its original name was the atom, in honor of the smallest particle of matter.
Paris blossoms out with its first bathing beauty contest since the war, and peace, it's wonderful. Shapely misses from the Folies Bergère compete for the crown.
From that moment on, there was no question that the beach was a theater of erotic delight.
Short of material? Nifty, eh, mon ami?
I think this becomes most dramatically evident in the decade of the 60s. It's then that a whole young generation makes synonymous or creates an equation between nudity and liberalism.
In Surfers' Paradise, clothes are used not to conceal but to reveal. It has become the bikini capital of Australia. Any mealtime, this sort of thing is likely to walk in between the soup and the entree and leave you with a fishbone stuck in your throat. Indoors or out, by night or by day, you're likely to find something like this quietly creeping up behind you. There's no doubt the Australian fashion houses do produce the best underdressed women in the Southern Hemisphere, and the most remarkably dressed men. Yeah, what about that then?
Australians exported their exuberant bikini culture to the rest of the world. And 30 years ago, Gold Coast designer Paula Stafford shocked with her creations.
Australia was a leader in bikinis, really, although they didn't originate in Australia. I think we had a particular style, we had a particular finish that made the Australian bikinis just a little cut above the others. In Honolulu, they wouldn't sell the string tie ones. No, they didn't like the very brief ones because they'd never seen them.
Get into the swim of things with something scantier for a scamper along the shore.
But there was no stopping the bikini.
Another racy, lacy, and violet this time, also 50. Mother never told me crocheting could look like this. But getting down to the bare facts...
Each season, the critics predicted its demise. Each season, it just got smaller and smaller.
Well, it's early in the morning and it's time to make a start, and I put my poly surfboard on the rack upon my car. I head down to the surfside where the waves are breaking fine. I'm gonna catch a mountain, but I won't go down the mine.
The evolution of the bikini went hand in hand with the birth of a surf culture, with its own music, art, and clothes.
You're moving down the wall, as steady as she goes. You got your toes upon the nose, and now you're hanging fine, hanging fine, hanging fine.
It was a culture which shocked the establishment at the time.
You know, if you owned a pair of jeans, t-shirt and desert boots, you were very, very alternative, let me tell you. I mean, people were still going to the beach in suits.
Australians looked to Hawaii and turned the beach into a party.
When we saw the board shorts that were being used in Hawaii, we immediately gravitated towards those. When you see big Hawaiian waves on film, the effect is very dramatic. You're in awe.
I think when Midge Farrelly and Nat Young really sort of took off and won the competitions and changed the way surfing was, it just meant that surfing belonged to Australia. It showed us, young Australians, that surfing, we were as good as anybody in the world. And you've got to remember that it was at a point when there's a massive cultural cringe.
We may be descendants of, you know, white outcasts from England, but, you know, just they threw us in a wonderful place in Australia. And they consigned us to heaven, and they stayed in hell. I guess we decided to dress like we were in heaven. we put on our board shorts, and the girls put on their bikinis.
Everyone in surfing is a real individual, and I don't think any of them try to live up to any image whatsoever. They try to live up their own image.
That means you choose your own look, from an all-encasing wetsuit to something a little more seductive.
I mean, I like to wear skimpy little bikinis because I get a good suntan when I'm out in the water, but they're not really practical when you go surfing because they fall off really easy. I make sure I wear shorts so I don't have too many guys pulling on my leg rope or paddling behind me, checking out my butt. I wish guys wore more Speedos out in the water. That'd be more fun.
Surfing has developed into a culture of freedom and rebellion, and surfwear reflects that attitude. And on the streets of London, the name and message of the Australian surfwear company Mambo is becoming as well known as it is on the beaches of Australia.
Mambo definitely has politics. We've created our own culture. When we first started, we wanted to attack the established surfing market, and it was dominated by several brands who pretty much went for the classic youth exploitation line of sponsoring athletes, whereas we wanted to provide something that was more colourful and ironic and took the piss out of that very thing.
But the one thing no one has a go at is the undisputed sex appeal of the swimsuit and the glamorous women who wear them. There are few things more glamorous and seductive than beautiful women in beautiful places and wearing beautiful swimsuits. That's always been the case, regardless of how much flesh women were allowed to show.
It's a well-known fact that nothing is more boring to the libido than the unclothed human body. So in the course of the 20th century, we can almost map by decades the migration of erogenous zones from the ankles and the wrists to the leg and the arm in the 20s, the back in the 30s, the bosom in the 40s and the 50s, the navel in the 60s, and in the 70s and 80s, the upper thigh, which has been manipulated by the Nautilus machine and sculpted into preternatural forms.
Redondo Beach, California sees the latest in beachwear, including the latest shocking no-stocking fads.
The cinema very early on discovered the benefits of swimsuits.
Introduced in 1912, the Senate girls brought cheesecake to the screen and popularized the one-piece bathing suit. From their ranks rose such stars as Gloria Swanson, Phyllis Haver, Phoebe Daniel, Sally Eilers, and Marie Prevost.
But the fantasy wasn't matched by the reality, and most people were stuck with wearing homemade, ugly, knitted swimwear. But help was on its way. With an eye to a potentially huge market, American woolen manufacturers Janssen decided to bring swimming to the United States. They built a huge swimming pool complex in Portland, Oregon, and made swimwear that was appropriate for this hot new sport. Its trademark was a red diving girl, an image initially banned by police chiefs in many American states as being bad for public morals.
Janssen probably was a very significant factor in the 1920s in reducing the bulk of the swimsuit, particularly on women's suits, which had long skirts and fairly long legs, shortened the legs, tightened up the skirt. You began to get openings or vents on the sides. They worked toward exposing more of the body to sunlight back in the 1920s.
The company then set out to sell their product to women, and what better image to use than women wearing stunning bathing costumes. The advertisements were designed by the top graphic artists of the time. Over the years, they cleverly recruited top Hollywood film stars to model their swimsuits. Stars like Marilyn Monroe, Douglas Fairbanks, and Loretta Young.
By the late 20s and early 30s, starlets were donning swimsuits to promote their films, to promote real estate developments, and so on.
Like all film folk, universal starlets like Ruth Hampton are right in the swim in the newest swim styles. Under the print shirt, she wears puff pants. Cute, yes? How's the water, Ruth? Oh, cold, hmm? Well, go ahead, it's not that cold. Did Mother say not to go near the water?
The heyday of the ornamental swimsuit was the 40s and 50s, when stars like Esther Williams made the swimsuit exotic, and synchronized swimming became the rage.
It's Esther Williams Day at Atlantic City. The Aqua Beauty arrives at the pleasure resort for the premiere of her newest picture, UI's Raw Wind in Eden, which is also the occasion for 3 days of civic festivities. And naturally, Miss Williams makes quite a splash on arrival. Some like 'em sleek, some like 'em frilly.
The bathing costume had become a work of art and clever design. An industry of glamour was born.
We come up with swimsuit fashions for 1952.
Extraordinary concoctions, swimsuits made of gold lame, silver, encrusted with gems, garments that seemed to be entirely unwater-worthy. And in fact, they weren't meant for swimming. They were meant for the new swimming pool culture. After the war in the United States, swimming pools spread across the country like a rash, and suburban entertaining shifted from the living room to the swimming pool. Dad manning the barbecue and Mom in her gold lame swimsuit with her projectile breasts serving martinis and long-stemmed glasses.
Today, that lifestyle has moved into holiday resorts, and the swimsuit that was never designed for swimming has flourished. But top European designer Marianne Melhorn is today inspired by the glamorous past.
It's more, I think, the way how you cut your swimsuit or your bikini, which really gives the glamorous touch. It can be a black swimsuit and has just a tiny little bit of something, and it's a glamorous piece. And if you then add something like a wraparound, it is really a showpiece. If you look backwards in the past, let's say the 40s, they were great. They have these lines, these sophisticated, clean lines, which we still love and which we can also transfer in our nowadays world.
In the exposed 90s the glamorous costume has had a almost paradoxical role. The body has gone as public as it possibly can go, and yet we see the reappearance of swimwear that comes in many layers. The basic swimsuit accompanied by a skirt, a jacket, a hat, all of these accessories that are diaphanous, a garment that one would be loath to immerse in chlorine to actually swim in.
Alongside the glamour industry, there's a flourishing business to cater for those who seriously swim and want the right swimsuits to win medals in. Today's competitions were born in the 1920s, when bathing began its evolution into a serious sport. But early champions like Boy Charlton had to make do with pretty strange competition swimsuits. And in 1912, Fanny Durack and Mina Wiley had to cover up before their Olympic swim.
It was dreadful for a woman to get into a costume and show her legs and everything else, you know, and they had a green cloak and they sort of put it round here like this, and they got on the starting board and ready to go, and the starter said, "Are you ready?" And they quickly threw off these huge big cloak things and dived in.
Fanny Durack beat the moral pressures, won her race and became Australia's first gold medalist.